Yeah, so like Brad said, Jacob Miller, Northern Precision Farming manager. There's a lot of guys there in the back that we can deal with too. Like Josh, if you want to start.
I'm here.
Then Blake Pugh, service manager here. Alex, sales. Scotty, sales. A bunch of technicians back there too that most of you guys know. So what we're going over today is the automation on the 50 series machines. How many of you guys have been around automation or have a combine that's got automation on it already? So a good chunk of us kind of know what's going on with it. So quick little overview, a couple little tips and tricks on setting it, and Josh is going to go over some calibrations here after a little bit too. So what is Harvest Command? It's a proactive adjustment on machine settings. It kind of lets a guy that doesn't have a whole lot of experience setting a combine, it lets the 700 take over and make a lot of those adjustments for us. Kind of takes a lot of stress out of operating one of these machines. It uses 16 sensors to adjust all the combine settings. There's really only 3 new ones that added to the machine. A lot of these have been on the machines for a very long time. So the 3 new ones they added are the sieve pressure, the clean grain cam, which we have out here, and the vane position sensors. This is usually your first run screen. Oh. This is your first run screen, so this is how it is set up from the factory. A lot of things really haven't changed on the automation side of things. So the main ones are your shortcut button there at the top, and then with the automation on, it splits all 3 of your loss funnels. So you have your rotor loss, your grain quality, your sieve loss, material other than grain, your tailings loss, and then that last part of the funnel is going to be your sieve pressure, how it's loaded. The nice little button at the top shoots you right over to the automation settings. So instead of hitting back and then the automation tab, you can just hit that to make all your adjustments right there. Yeah, I guess jumped ahead a little bit, but there's all your loss meters. What we're really shooting for is those funnels to be about 75% full, which is a little bit different than what we were running in the 30 and 40 series. So a lot of guys would just have a little bit of green on the bottom of that and make adjustments off that. But with the automation, you really want to utilize all of that funnel. So if it's above 75% and it stays in the red for a little bit, that combine will start making adjustments for you. To set up Harvest Command, like I said, you could either hit that button in the top or hit the back button and go to your automation tab there at the bottom. From there, the 3 main buttons you're going to have at the bottom are your base, your advanced, and your sensitivities tab. So the first one is the basic. You'll usually set your crop type either on this page or on your run page. And then you'll select your strategy, which is grain quality, performance, fixed throughput, or max throughput. The 3 main ones guys usually pick are the grain quality, performance, or maximum throughput. The nice thing too is if you hit that little I next to any one of those, it'll give you an explanation kind of which one or what those do for you. Underneath that, you'll also set your max ground speed, which is used for Feedrate Control, kind of cruise control in the field. And then you'll set your target max engine load, which is usually 100% to 110%. You want to utilize all the machine. Under the Advanced tab, you'll have your initial settings. This one is kind of personal preference. So like when you first pull into that field, it either lets you have automatic or current settings. So when you first pull in and it's set to automatic, the machine kind of says, I know this range, I can play in this whole range. If you have it set for current settings, it's like setting the combine the old school way. So you'll have your sieves where you want them, your concaves, rotor speed, and it'll make adjustments where you have that set. Adjust frequency is how long your loss meters, if they're above the red line, how long it takes for that combine to make an adjustment. Most of the time we'll have that set to medium. In really adverse conditions to where we have green spots in the field still, or somewhere that got washed out, we want to bump that up to high. If it's a pretty consistent crop at the end of the year, we'll move that to low so it's not jumping around as much. You want to talk about threshing conditions?
Can. So some of this is kind of some of the stuff that isn't as publicized even when you hit your info tab. Can you hear me back here? Okay. So when you're looking at the threshing conditions tab, that's when you hit that info button, it doesn't give you a lot of information on what that's at. This slide has done a pretty good job of explaining what your threshing conditions are actually going to be. So your recommended starting point on easy, it's going to allow us a full range or the largest range of your vanes and your rotor speed. But as you change that, I know over the years, especially last year, working with some guys new on these machines, you start changing that thresh condition and you notice things aren't moving. That's the biggest thing of what this is doing. It's regulating. When you go to a medium thresh, it doesn't allow your vanes to go to your fast settings anymore. So it's going to start restricting those movements. So you're not going to see as many movements on that, as well as your rotor speed is going to be affected. That's your big two things that thresh condition is going to affect, okay? And of course, then you go to hard thresh condition, it limits it even more. Basically, you're keeping your vanes in a retarded or a slow position, okay? You have your rotor max speeds. You can always set those caps wherever you're comfortable. I know a lot of guys don't like, they see certain conditions of these machines getting outside of what they've ever been comfortable running in the past with an old machine. Everything can be customized on this to limit it where you're comfortable running, okay? And that's whether it's a ground speed or a rotor speed. You can still let the machine have its range to work, but you can cap where that is, where your hard point that you feel comfortable running, okay?
Yeah, and one of the most important buttons on this screen is that reset automations. So don't be scared of this button. If this automation gets out of whack in any way, like it starts closing sieves or slows your fan way down, sometimes the sensitivity numbers get kind of weird on us. That reset automation will put everything back to factory defaults. It'll kind of clear out some of those weird little bugs. So that is a very important button on the automation side of things.
You got this stream there?
Yeah. So under this tab is your sensitivities. You can either change them from the run screen just like we were used to, just click on the button underneath the funnel, or we can get into this under the Sensitivities tab. So if we click onto it on the run screen, it gives us 4 choices. I think acceptable, more, or too much, way too much. We used to change those based off those 4 buttons, but we've kind of got away from that because if you go from too much to way too much, it might jump that sensitivity number by 30. We kind of recommend moving those sensitivity numbers by about 5 or 10 now, so plus or minus. Recommended sensitivities are kind of laid out in that pamphlet. That's a good starting point. It's a little bit different than what the 700 has in it. So.
Okay, feed rate sensitivity. That's going to be, again, a reaction point on how it reacts to changing crop conditions, okay? And this is feed rate is where it's basically your cruise control for your automation, right? Everybody understands that? And I know there's been concerns that we've got a lot of people not utilizing that because they don't feel like it's working well or what. I'm hoping we can get everybody on the page for one, making sure we're doing the right calibrations with this. Also making sure that we understand how to set it all up, okay?
Feed rate's just one more thing that the combine can control to make that grain sample a lot better, utilize the combine a lot more. So
hopefully get, in the end of the day, get more acres done too. So So the lower sensitivity settings are going to make it less responsive, of course, kind of makes sense there. Higher is going to make it faster reacting to changing conditions, okay? So you come up over that sand knob, it's going to react a little faster. If you're a nice even playing field, crops are pretty consistent across, you can turn that sensitivity down, okay? Trying to think if there's anything else on this. You guys have copies of all these slides, so if there's anything we've grazed over, that's why we gave you guys these printouts. So headland settings, that's one of the things that I haven't set up for anybody in my setups. I don't know if anybody's using that. We've had headland settings in these machines for years. Even when we just had automatic crop settings, we were able to change these machines. When you automatically pick your header up at the end of the field, you can start changing your fans and sieves. So situations like a low test weight bean, you're not blowing that crop out of the back as that sieve starts to clean out, okay? Everybody's seen that on your headlands. These machines clear back to 20 series could do this. We can take it a little further with the machine today. We have pre-sieve settings that we can change on that. And if we set it up in these run screens right here, it is automatic. As soon as you go into your headland mode, above work heights, it reconfigures the machine to what your settings are here, okay? And then the moment you hit your resume, put your head back down in work condition, it takes you right back to where you were before, okay? So some of the things we do, it's got some recommended set points here for changing your fan speeds and opening your sieves, closing your lower sieve. Basically what your goal on that is, make that grain recirculate back through the machine, through your tailings is what you're doing with that. Making sure you don't blow it out the back. So you're going to slow your fans down, open your top sieve up, close the lower sieve so it forces it around, but you can do any or all of that depending on what you're comfortable with and your conditions. There's even getting to be some options for some of these new headers too, integrating some of your reel positions on that too. So originally, I know they were talking, you could drop that reel down, get that last crop wiped off the cutter bar. This part of the country, we've got a lot of rocks. I'm kind of the other train of thought, pick that reel up at the headland so you can see that rock sitting there before it flips it on your belt. So some of that kind of stuff can be done too with this headland settings on the machine. And like I said, if you have, some of our guys here have two machines, one of them may not have automation. Even with the automatic crop settings, there is still a headland setup that you can still do your functions of your fan and your sieves, okay? So it's something, especially when you get in no situation with low test weight crop, take advantage of it. The machine's completely capable of it. So any questions on any of that? So here our status screen. If you've seen that screen, you've got a lot of green check boxes, hopefully all green check boxes. So here you're going to see the status. If you got green check boxes, you're good. If there's a function that you have told the machine, I don't want to control, you're going to see a green X, or a red X there. If there's a problem with a function, something's not in its commanded position, something like that, you're going to see a notation there on this screen. So if you go to the screen, everything's green, or there's something that you've told it you don't want to control and it doesn't have, green check, it's just a quick spot you can check and go back and figure out where your problem is. The other thing you see on here, the next tab over, is your info tab. This kind of goes back to that automatic crop settings that I talked about before. Rather than having to, when you're in automation, automatic crop settings is disabled, so you don't have those start point screens like you always had with ACS. But here in this info tab, it's the same information there. So if you're manually setting that machine up, you can go in and see what those numbers are. When you're initially doing your calibrations on a new crop, new machine startup, these are your start points that you can manually set that machine to pull into the crop. Get enough numbers in the machine to where you can get it actually rolling with automation. Okay? Loss meter theory. Jacob kind of touched on this a little bit ago with the theory's changed from the older machines to automation now with the split funnel setup. We're trying to utilize 75% of that funnel for your reference point for where we're running. Rather than having that funnel run and clear down at the bottom, you want to see some color in that funnel. It's just the way the software is written different today from what they were, okay? Understanding the split funnel, so before the whole funnel was just one function, so we only had our 3 losses. Today we're looking at more stuff with that grain camera image, our sieve pressure on the far right when you got your feed rate systems running. It's the same theory in operation. We just want to make sure we're using that 75% of that. Okay.
Yeah, and if your loss is hanging up above that 75% for a specific amount of time, that machine will start making changes, and that's to change how soon or how late that combine changes is back under the automation tab, and then your adjust frequency. So low adjust frequency, it's going to take a long time hanging out in the red for that machine to make a change. High adjust frequency, if it sees red for about 20 seconds, it'll start making a change. And the way you know it's making a change is all your numbers, like your rotor, your sieve position, your fan speed, it'll be blue for about 3 or 4 seconds when it's making a change to let you know what it's doing. So.
Okay, so here we touched on it before, the sensitivity. When you hit that funnel, whichever half you're looking at, you're going to get this screen pop up. We're encouraging everybody this year going forward not to rely on your acceptable too much, those numbers. So you can either manually change it back on that screen we looked at before, or you can come down here, you can touch that graph on this picture, and it'll pull up, basically enlarge that graph where you can change those numbers, okay? So it's still here, but it's not it's a finer adjustment rather than just hitting it too much or way too much. It's just a very coarse adjustment, and a lot of times we're overshooting our sensitivities doing it that way, okay? So try to utilize that. Start out moving just 5 points at a time for adjusting and fine-tuning that sensitivity, okay? So we're not jumping quite overshooting back and forth on us. Everybody understand that? Just a little different than I think we've kind of pushed it from the beginning. Everybody good? I see Ken. Not to call you out, Ken.
The way too much compared to what you're, tell me again what you're.
So if you're going to hit way too much right here from where it's marked as acceptable, it's going to jump that probably at least 30 points.
Yeah, it might be 60 or that sensitivity number might be 80.
Which very well could overshoot you, and then you're going to be hitting, oh, now it's not acceptable, I'm going the other way. So you're going to be just bouncing around that number. So what you can do is you can come down here, hit the graph right here, just touch that graph, and change it like 5 or 10 points at a time, rather than jumping 30 or 40 at a time. And you can just fine tune that a little better.
Adjusting everything or something specific?
It's just going to change, like here on this particular one we have up is going to be your rotor loss. So you're changing that funnel to dial in that funnel so that then the rest of the machine on harvest command adjusts based off of what your acceptability is on that, rotor or sieve loss or whatever that particular funnel is. So we're just trying to get everybody fine-tune a little more rather than going just the coarse adjustments.
And it does take about a minute or two for that combine to get enough data to actually allow you to adjust. So sometimes you might hit that and it says not enough data points to actually adjust that yet. So it just takes going down the field a little bit longer to actually adjust that.
With that being said, so say you move it 10 points or whatever, is it going to move the little, now we're into too much, or is that going to move those?
No, that's still going to, that should stay as the acceptable at that point, even though you fine-tuned it there.
Okay, I didn't know if it's going to say, well, move as loud or whatever, too much.
You slide that bar graph and then push OK.
Yeah, so when you hit that bar graph, it's going to pop up the little window, similar to what you've seen before of just that bar graph. You can move it with the arrows, or you can touch the graph and coarsely move it if you need to move the graph, and then you're just going to hit OK when you're done. Everybody a little more clear on that now? That's definitely different than the way even last year we were encouraging these to be used. Just everybody was searching way too much on these machines and just not getting it dialed in where you needed it.
And sometimes we'll get these funnels adjusted way out of range. That combine will do really weird stuff. That's where that reset automation button really comes back into play. It knocks all your sensitivities back down to a default level.
And there is a reset sensitivities button too.
Yes.
On that automation tab, to where you can go and just reset your sensitivities. If that's the only thing you're having problems with, you're happy with the ranges it's working in, but you're not happy with the way it's reading what your data is coming in, basically your feedback to the funnels, you can just reset the sensitivities the same way. You're just going to hit one button, hit OK, it just takes these back to factory default, and then you start dialing it in without affecting your actual thresholds that you set on your harvest command itself. Okay, everybody understand? Well, definitely different than what we've been doing. Okay, so we're talking our feed rate control modes. Okay, so you got your performance for strategy, which is going to be performance is trying to minimize your losses. Okay, so you're trying to keep that grain in the machine. Okay, maximum throughput is you're going to end up giving up a little bit of your losses, but you're trying to get bushels just ran at the end of the day. Okay, and then fixed throughput, you're setting a particular rate of crop feed that you want through that machine, and you're saying I want to run X number of bushels per hour. That's where you're setting it at. So it's going to change that rate to try to maintain that number. Most of the time, guys are probably going to be running more toward the performance side on this one. Try to minimize the losses. That's the end of the day. That's what we're trying to do: get the grain in the tank, get it to the bin. Okay. It does going forward. There's going to be slides we're going to talk about at the very back of this slide when we're talking calibrations. The calibrations are, especially the second calibration we'll talk about, is very critical for your, I believe it's performance and the fixed throughput settings. It's not as critical, but still recommended for maximum throughput, okay? So if you're running that performance setting, which is generally where we're going to be recommending guys doing, it's going to be more critical to make sure we're doing both of those calibrations. And I don't think a lot of guys are doing that. That's kind of the concern, of making sure we're getting feed rate calibrated so it's operating efficiently for you, okay? Make sure my notes here. Okay, so here we're talking about feed rate versus operator control. You running the machine, okay? So you're going to be trying to maintain consistent amount of material running through the machine. It's going to adjust based off of your engine loads. This is where when you're doing your setups, you're setting your maximum power loads. I think defaults to 100, but you can run that 105, 110%. So you can push these machines a little bit. It's just where you're comfortable there. You can also set your maximum travel speeds on this too. So keeps this thing from ramping up. If you're, this is where the common sense of the farmer hopefully kicks in, and you know that, this machine, we're not going to run at 16 mile an hour, even though the machine's not full. You can set that threshold down, and it's just going to run up to where you have that maximum speed set at. Okay, so those are critical numbers when you're initially setting that up. Those numbers really come into play for running feed rate. Okay.
I know a lot of guys, they've probably played around with that feed rate control. You hit the button. A lot of times, if this calibration that he was talking about is not done, it'll ramp up to that high speed. A lot of guys will just pull that hydrostat back and say, I'm not messing with this feed rate at all. It doesn't know what it's doing. This calibration Josh is talking about is you have the machine loaded to where you normally think it should be, your average field travel speed. You'll push and hold the feed rate control button, and it gives that machine a good starting point. It says, hey, I know the operator wants to go this fast. We're going to start here and make adjustments from there. Instead, like if we didn't do that calibration, it'd just say, hey, I'm going to run to your max speed and see what happens. And usually it overloads the machine, and yeah, the customer doesn't use it again. So
when we're talking to calibrations, we took time. If you look at the very back of your guys' packets, we actually pulled a page right out of an operator's manual for one of these 50 series combines, put it in this handout just so you guys have it in one more place. So those two calibrations we're talking is your zero cal, okay? So basically that's calibrating this machine empty, right? So if you read through that procedure, and we'll just read basically right through it here so everybody understands, it's not a difficult thing to do. So basically we're just gonna have your machine up, work conditions, the machine's warm, ready to go, you're harvested, ready to harvest crop. You're gonna engage your threshing and your header drive, set your engine speed to high idle, okay? You're gonna lift your header up above maximum work height, okay? And then that's it. You're basically gonna just let the machine sit there. It will sit and run, basically empty machine is what it's doing there. Everybody wants to just hit that, drop that head and take off. Give this machine a couple seconds to sit and run empty, no load. It's basically self-calibrating itself at that point, okay?
It gives that machine like I'm not running any crop. This is the minimum amount of power it takes to run this. So,
okay. So, and basically, if you notice here, I think it even tells you there's going to be an icon because I think you're grayed out. Somewhere I read that. Yeah, your little icon in the top, I believe it said it grayed out on it. I just read through this again myself to refresh myself, but yeah, okay, down here at the note, yeah, the little indicator for your feed rate, it'll turn gray while it's doing this, okay? So once it's no longer gray, up to about 15 seconds, then it's gonna go ahead, it'll come back to your color on it, and then you're ready to go ahead and drop your head and pull in the crop, okay?
The next slide shows that icon.
Yeah, it does. So if you look up in the upper right, that little icon kind of looks like a speedometer with a combine in the front of it, okay? Your second calibration is actually on the very back page, which this is the one that I said kind of makes more difference on all the machines need the 0 point. Technically, if you're running just your max throughput, it's not as critical. Still recommended to do these calibrations, but this is going to be your set point. Basically, you're trying to tell the machine, this is the conditions I want you to run in, okay? So on that one, you're going to be running through your field at your set ground speed and load that you're looking for. You need a minimum of 20 seconds of crop flow, okay? So you can't just, as soon as you get in the field, take off of this. You're going to be kind of like when we do our initial calibrations, you want to be running through the machine, even consistent flow. You don't want to be hitting the button to calibrate this thing just as you're coming to the blow sand knob or something like that. And you're going to press and hold that feed rate button on your multifunction handle for 2 seconds. And then you're going to get on that little hourglass is going to pop up right there by that indicator for feed rate. And then it's going to be doing your calibration at that moment. It's going to set, basically you're telling it this is where I want you to run. It's very critical, especially on that fixed throughput. That's how you are telling it what your throughput is at that moment, okay? So if you don't do that, these numbers have no base point. There's nothing to base that off of. So that's the one we need to be using to set it. 0 is critical, so the machine knows what no load is. This is telling the threshold from no load to where you're wanting it to run, okay? Yep.
So you don't have to be in a calibration screen.
Nope. This is kind of like your old school ground cal that we used to do on clear back on 2100s. There's no particular screen you have to go through. You're just going to use this button, press and hold it for 2 seconds. Of course, we got to do our 0 cal, and these numbers do need to change when you change your crop type, okay? So your feed rate and your 0 cal are going to be different on the machine for beans versus corn versus popcorn because your no loads, you're in different speeds, different chopper loads, all that kind of stuff's different on the machine. So when you change crop type, you need just the same thing with when we used to do our ground cows. When you've changed your header, it's a different running situation. So you need to make sure you do that calibrate each time. Luckily, it's a fairly easy calibration. Hopefully we can afford 15 seconds for a 0 cal while we're, hopefully it gains us enough at the end of the day. We made that 15 seconds and then some back.
Well, I assume when you say that, once we get it set for beans or corn, it remembers that for the year.
Yep, it's going to remember that. Okay. So if something doesn't seem to work, kind of like header height, every once in a while, something doesn't happen. There's no real reset, but we can just quick do another cal. I personally would recommend if you're having issues, the feed rate's not wanting to run consistent, go back, start with the 0 cal again, because we don't know really which calibration's causing issues or something's changed. Go ahead and do your 0 cal, go ahead and go back and do the other cal. So, we're technically both calibrations together, you've got 17 seconds of your life that it's taken to do this calibration. So
that's for like 3 hours.
It's kind of good practice too. So like do one in the beginning of the year in corn, that high moisture stuff. Yeah. It's your speed's completely different from beginning of the year to the end of the year. So
the other thing too, when he brings up different conditions, keep in mind, if you hit your work conditions tab on these things, there's a lot more options in work condition than what we used to have, okay? We're running automation. These machines are capable of basically jumping back to where you were. So you get in those situations, especially with fungicides and whatnot today, we're seeing situations where you got some nasty green stem beans, and then maybe you had some beans you didn't spray. They're going to be dry. You can have your two complete different work conditions if we're making sure we're consistent in changing these. The machine doesn't have to relearn those situations. You change your work condition back to green stem after you've been running some dry. It goes right back to all your setup where you were in that green stem condition, your high moisture conditions on corn. You can save yourself a lot of that time for this thing relearning itself. We're not just running a work condition. And a lot of guys, they had a corn work condition and a bean work condition for years. Today, if we can utilize these work conditions, it allows this whole machine to bank what your parameters were under that condition. If you come up with something else, you still have a new tab. You can make a new work condition and have your own custom parameters for this machine. That work condition is based off your crop type. So if you've got multiple corn scenarios, so if you're a guy that's running waxy and conventional, you can use your corn 2 for switching your crop type. You can use your work conditions to make sure in each of those conditional changes, your harvest command settings are remembering that work condition. You do also have, when you look at your work conditions, you're going to have like auto dry or auto default, and then you're just going to have one that says default or dry. Those type of situations, that's where you can use, if you're running a condition with just automatic crop settings versus auto is your automation. So you can even separate them to that point too, just to make it easier for you to be able to bounce back and forth in these machines for all the different adverse conditions we see. Down corn may be a problem. You can have a work condition because the machine, you're going to be running stuff a little different when you run an extra trash through, but you don't want this whole machine to have to try to relearn itself every time your conditions change. So we can use those and save those even year to year to jump back into it to a point. Everybody clear on that? So this is going to be your modes of operation. You can use them in conjunction or independently, basically. You're going to have your the harvest command off and feed rate off, okay? So this is your old school automatic crop settings. You're driving the machine, you're setting everything up. You can have harvest command on with feed rate off. So you're setting the ground speed at this point. We can have harvest command off, feed rate on. So you're controlling all the inputs and rotor and speeds and all that stuff, but feed rate is controlling how fast the machine's feeding itself. It's trying to keep your sieve full, basically, that's what feed rate's goal is keep that sieve full, okay? And then you can have both on, which hopefully we spent the money on these machines. Hopefully we're utilizing all the technology here and we're understanding how to make it work.
Yeah, so the picture on the in the top of that, it shows the feed rates on. A nice thing about it is if you kick out the auger, if you're unloading on the go, instead of that little arrow in the top corner, it'll be a pause symbol. So then you're in control of the speed when you're unloading on the go. And if you grab that hydrostat handle, it shuts off the feed rate too. So just like grabbing a steering wheel to kick out auto guidance, it's not going to speed you up or slow you down.
And hitting that pause once you shut that unloader off, it goes right back to where you were for your ground speed, okay?
Yeah, and then in the headliner of the machine, there's a picture of a combine. It says auto on it. If you just push and hold that for a second, you'll get the A in the little picture of the combine. That means automation's on. If automation's off, it'll be your rotor gear right there in that where the A is.
It also changes your funnels too. You'll see all those change. Okay, so this is getting back into the parts of the machine that really haven't changed. So automation's only as good as what we're giving it to work with, okay? Automation's an electrical technology. The automation has no idea mechanically how you have this machine set up. It's looking at your cameras, your sieve pressures, loss sensors, and it's trying to do the best it can with what it has to work with, okay? So it's very critical we still have mechanically this machine set up. That's where we all come in and have to do the right job setting it up, making sure everything's configured correctly. We've got the right components to do the best job we can. You know, we don't have a small grain sieve in the machine when we should be running a corn and bean sieve, that kind of thing. Automation has no clue other than if you told it it's got something different. But like rasp bars, automation has nothing to do, no way of knowing what rasp bars you have in this machine. It has no idea what modules you have in, whether you're, you could have this machine completely set up wrong. Automation's going to do the best it can, but it's not going to do a good job if we don't have the right components and don't have it all set up right, okay? So concave and module calibration, this is one over the years that has been a big one. I've seen a lot of guys that don't have a concave, so your actual concave, the H-frame itself, it's not sitting square in the machine. That's adjustable. There's linkage to actually straighten that up to where you've got consistent pressure all the way across the rotor. So when you're actually in this picture here where you're looking, there's a turnbuckle right here at the back of that concave frame. The front one is fixed. That turnbuckle is adjustable. So we can actually level that sieve up across the machine, okay? So that we're getting even consistent pressure on that rotor. If you have any of this apart, something gets bent, damaged, wears funny, it's critical. Most of the time you can just take a measurement on the side of that frame, see where the lower frame sets to the upper frame, okay? That should be nice and straight. In this other picture here, we also see our the bolts. Those are our 0 set point. So that's the positive stop when this frame closes all the way up. It's critical. For one, that sets where your 0 point is, so then you can come back and calibrate where 0 is later, okay? So that number, how many millimeters open that concave is for your automation is critical. It also at the point that you can adjust this 0 point for wear year to year on your rasp bars, okay? So as those rasp bars wear down, we can come back in, readjust, and recalibrate where your 0 is to that now rotor that's technically a little bit smaller in diameter. Big critical thing to keep in mind, when you do go back and put some new rasp bars on, all of a sudden the rotor's bigger, so you could have a collision, and you don't know, this is critical today with automation. This machine's moving that cage, you don't know where it's gonna move it to. We gotta have these set points set firm to where that thing cannot close up past 0, okay? Because it's not gonna be good when that happens. So these rasp bars do wear. If you are adjusting that, just keep in mind going forward, when you do replace, and I don't care if you replace 2 rasp bars, they're taller now. You have to reset that 0 point, okay? And when we're setting that 0 point, we're gonna just have somebody, it's easiest, you got a big bolt right in the front of the rotor. I generally have somebody with a ratchet turning that over until you can come up and either A, hit the bolt without any contact, you know you're at least can make a full travel. Then you can loosen those bolts up, turn them up in there further. You can keep closing until you get contact, okay? Once you have a rasp bar hitting, then you need to open that back up. Basically, you're gonna adjust those bolts down to that point, open it up a little bit more. You need at least a half to 1 full turn on those bolts. That gives you just a little bit of grace there to where we don't have any contact situation. The one thing I have seen on that, there is potential for a slight difference in wear on your modules too. They do wear as well. So if you throw a different module in there, you may want to reconfirm that set point, okay? It takes just a matter of seconds to turn that over and confirm that you have clearance, okay? The next one is your pinch point, which plays your threshing efficiency, but it's also going to play into your efficiency of your sieves, okay? So I've seen a lot of these machines over the years, they tend to ship them in the factory or from the factory where they're dropping a lot more grain on the right-hand side of your sieve, okay? And generally I look at, I can go in pretty quick, and when I see you've got a 2 to 4 degree offset in your sieves, that tells me we didn't have our concave most of the time set up correctly. We're now leaning that sieve over, running the grain diagonally across your sieves because you're putting too much on the right side up front. So if we adjust this cage to drop that grain more efficiently across the sieves, also now we can run that grain straight through the machine. Takes less time, we're getting a better separation of the crop. We're also putting that grain in a thinner mat across the active grain pan, so the active grain pan can do its job, sort the heavy grain out to the bottom before it hits your pre-sieve and drop straight through the machine up the elevator. Okay, everybody understand that?
You ought to be doing that when you work on it.
So here's the thing on that. I know a lot of guys say, why wasn't this set up at the, when we did a pre-delivery? You get a brand new machine. The only way that you can know this is set up right is doing a kill stall in the field. Everybody gets all gun shy when we talk about that. These machines have enough horsepower. The machine, Ken and I did it with his machine last year. Had absolutely no problem starting that machine up from a full load, you know, and we had what, 8 inches of grain sitting on that grain pan when we did a kill stall on that machine. I think the clean grain elevator ratcheted twice before it got everything up to speed and running, but it took it from that dead stop, okay? So these machines have plenty of power to do this stuff. You may not want to be in your rankest green stem spot of your beans when you do it, maybe, but like I said, these machines can do it, but that's the only way you're going to see. For one, with a kill stall, do you have the right modules in for your situation? Are you getting separation in the right spots? Do we have an even grain mat across the sieves and the active grain pan? That's really the only way to know you're doing this machine. And again, that's you doing that job right is what makes the difference in this automation, being able to take it to the next step, okay? Get the maximum out of these machines. When we're talking adjusting these cages, it's actually a very simple adjustment. And we'll walk around the machine here when we get done through the presentation, and we'll point out some of the stuff actually on the machine. But you're just loosening some pinch bolts, and that whole cage, there's push-pull bolts. We're just sliding the concave frame in the machine. That's all it's doing. So we're just shifting the side pressure of that concave to the rotor. So we're putting a little more pressure on the left side to make that grain distribution even, okay? That's all we're doing on that. And it just, most of these machines you can get it perfect. Some of them you still have a little bit more grain on that right side, but we can make it a whole lot better if we're setting that up correctly. Any questions on that? It's a mechanical adjustment that I think gets looked a lot, but it plays a big part in this machine's capacity. So this is our zero clearance. I kind of hit on that. It's talking with a little better indicator and pictures on what we're actually doing on that, okay? Level and shift. So again, level is that turnbuckle. The shift is the whole mount actually on the right side, because this concave is just it's only moving the left side. It hinges on that right side. So that's where that's critical. And that technically is a little different. Corn is where you're going to see your biggest, that's where we want to be adjusting your side shift, okay? Beans, you don't have as much crop in there. It's not going to be, I'm not going to say it's not critical, but it's not going to be as noticeable of a gain of having that adjusted. So it's not something we have to adjust as we change crop. Our corn is going to be our highest yielding crop. That's where we're trying to push the efficiency of this machine. Sieve calibrations. So this one with these machines today, now we've stepped up. We got 3 sieve calibrations we have to do, because pre-sieve's electric. Before that was a mechanical adjustment. You set it and kind of, for the most part, everybody forgot about it. When you do these calibrations, the quick and easy way to do these, all this system, even with your key off, nobody has to be in the cab. You can wake up any of these sieves. You got to press and hold the button for a couple seconds. It wakes up the computers. Then you can start moving your sieves. I always recommend everybody open them fully to clear any debris out of your sieves. Close them down completely. And then what we use is a 1/4 inch rule. The book and the computer is going to tell you a 6 millimeter 1/4 inch works, whether that's a piece of 1/4 inch key stock or get yourself a long 1/4 inch bolt out of your bolt bin. And you're going to keep bumping that open just until you can slide that bolt through at the angle of your sieve, okay? If we go through and set our pre-sieve, both upper and lower sieves all at a 1/4 inch to where they're all at that calibration point, we go up one time up in our cab, we go into each of those calibration menus, open it up, your pre-sieve calibration, you're going to open up, it's going to tell you to go down and open the sieve. You've already done that. All you got to do is go in, hit OK. You've already done it. You're just telling it that's already where I want it. It's just critical to do that on the opening stroke. It's all got to do with taking the play out of that sieve, okay? So that's the critical part, but you can save yourself a lot of leg and climbing up and down if we have all those set ahead of time, and then you can just go through all 3 of those in your display. Say, yes, I'm just confirming. Okay, I'm at 1/4 inch. Okay, I'm at 1/4 inch. Okay, I'm at 1/4 inch. And then you're done. That calibration's done, and unless you've had a mechanical damage on that sieve, or we've changed a sieve or something, that's done. You don't have to do it again, okay? I do recommend doing it at the beginning of the season. It doesn't take very long, but it's gonna, if something's worn, that linkage, that linkage is moving continuously, stuff can play, get play in it, do a quick calibration before you start.
And like Josh was saying, the automation's only as good as these calibrations. So if the automation says, hey, we need to have the sieves at position 6 and they're all the way closed, you're going to be blowing all that stuff out the back. So very important to do all these calibrations at least once in the season. So.
And if you notice too, you'll see these sieves move quite a bit when you're running automation. I'm really amazed how much the pre-sieve is being utilized when that was one of those that we sat and forgot with a conventional machine, okay? So it makes a big, that pre-sieve is where we got a lot of capacity in this machine. But again, that's one of those, the active grain pan is the critical factor in how efficient that pre-sieve can be, because the active, I don't know if everybody understands what the active part of the grain pan is. It's actually, as that machine is shaking, your heavy grain is sifting to the bottom. All that mog is going to shift to the top. So then when that comes across that pre-sieve, all that heavy grain that's already been sorted can just go straight down and out of the machine, okay? Where you're hopefully left with a little bit of mixed grain and a lot of mog on top that the fan can get lifted out the back, okay? So that's where the pre-sieve's coming in and adding so much capacity to these machines. Everybody understand? Okay, so we're going to get into talking a little bit about modules. So I know we didn't have one of the new 25 millimeter. So if you look at this screen, this is the same round bar we've ran for a long time. Adds a lot of capacity in our corn. So what we've done, they have one now with a larger gap between the bars, okay? More room for grain to flow through. You know, it's amazing the capacity you get of a round bar over a conventional skip wire or large wire, but we've added more capacity yet with this larger gap on this, okay? So we're getting more grain to separate faster in the machine, right? So there's always a mixed train of thought on where to put these, right? And everybody's got their theory. So the big thing on it, if we go look at our next screen here, if you're looking at this machine, you can see the round bar here. Yeah, you got some material through, but when you look at the large wire over here on the left side of the screen, there's not going to be much grain separation. Probably once that crop mat gets so thick, you're probably not getting great roll on the cobs either. So you're not getting even a good thresh at that point. So with the round bar, you're getting twofold. One, that grain's moving more. The cob is going to be encouraged to roll more, but it's also going to be giving you a place to separate that crop. So if you see all this pinning in here, most of the time you put your hand up in that loose mat, you're going to feel a lot of grain falling out. So that's lost separation. The faster we can get this grain to separate in the front of the machine, down on that grain pan for the active grain pan to start sorting it out, the more capacity we add to it, right? So you see everybody from 2 to 4 round bars in these machines. You can even get into situations, you get dry beans, these round bars can still run dry beans a lot of times too. Green stem beans, probably not. In those situations, you're still going to be have to changing your modules back, okay? Anything to end? Any questions? We've got some modules up here for everybody to, if you haven't seen the difference, you can put them beside each other. But yeah, the new round bar has got a larger spacing between the bars. So there's going to be less bars on that module, okay? So this is a change for header drive gearbox, the newer heavy duty gearbox. This machine does not have the new one. They've got some, I believe they're even got a cooling fin built into these gearboxes to help keep these cool. Some guys were having issues with the bigger chopping heads and whatnot, putting a lot of load on these gearboxes. We've tried synthetic oils over the years. We've tried all kinds of different stuff. So they've made a revision for a heavy duty gearbox. Okay, so that is, I'm assuming, available through parts. If a guy, I'm assuming at Retros if we needed to upgrade, but
I believe so.
So, you want to talk software?
Yep. So there's been a couple software changes over the years. They just came out with a pretty good sized packet this spring. So I'm a big supporter of, if it's not broke, let's try to keep it running. A lot of times the early automation software, it'd do some weird stuff, slow the fan way down, it'd shut the sieves. So software updates kind of fixed that. The update in September allowed for in your header selection for these new FD2s, and on the, I think, 23 or 24 models, it allows for the lateral belt speed to be controlled by the 700. It also added the contour wheels. A lot of guys don't run those around here, so yeah, that's pretty much all the new stuff on the software update. It didn't change too much at all. There's the lateral belt speed, and also added reel speed to the 700 too. So yeah, that's the contour wheels for wheat. It allows you to set a pressure in the 700, and it also puts the aftercut lights on the dial up in the headliner too.
Cool. I think that's the end of the presentation here. Any questions before we get up and move around the machine over here?
I may have missed it. You use the Feedrate Control, the 0-point calibration.
Yep.
Do you have to press the move button?
Nope.
You just come to the end and let
You
it
gotta, basically, you're just gonna let the machine sit and run empty with you above work condition. And it's the 15 seconds, and during that point, that's when your feed rate will be grayed out. That's how you know it's in the calibration mode, okay? And you just gotta give it time, that 15 seconds to do that, so.
But you said you had to do warm.
Yeah, basically, yeah, worm
Rose or something, and then
yeah, work condition. And it's one of those things. Once it's calibrated, it's not the end all. Yeah, you just want your oil up to temperature. That's going to be the rule on any calibration, and it's one of those things that if it's the first time starting up the machine, cold oil, yes, it's going to be different, but it's still, any calibration is better than no calibration.
Mm-hmm.
And this thing's automatically doing it anyway. So if you're just going to pick that up, it's going to go into this cal mode no matter what the condition. Just understand that once you have it all up to operating condition, just pause that later and do it again. So it's just that simple. It will do this at any point that you sit there and pause and give it time to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
are they designed, the automation for all your settings and the feed, are they designed to work together?
As far as harvest command automation and the feed rate, absolutely. But it can work if you want to use one or the other. That was where we're talking, the 4 different modes. You can use all or just part of it in any combination.
It's recommended to use both because the automation and the feed rate definitely work together. Just try to keep that machine full, keep it operating at max capacity. So
hopefully at the end of the day, like we said, we'll get more done. I mean, that's the end goal, and to do it efficiently, save our fuel costs. You see a big difference on vane positions and fuel consumptions on these combines. So if we're maximizing this machine, hopefully we're saving fuel. Hopefully we're getting more done at the end of the day. Hopefully out of the field before the snow flies. Anything else? Okay. You want to talk camera?
yeah, so the grain cam is located on the other side of this machine. It's 2 pins to pull the thing out. Every once in a while, if we run in like real nasty wet crop, that lens will get pretty gummed up, and the 700 will yell at you, said, please clean grain cam. It's just a matter of pulling those pins. It kind of flops out. Just take a paper towel or a microfiber towel and just wipe the lens clean, put it back in, and you're ready to go. The camera is using, I believe it's just infrared light and just normal RGB light. It's checking that kernel to see whether there's any cracks, material other than grain, anything going past that lens. So,
and they do the heating elements in there. So sometimes you see a message pop up on there for, camera not ready, or I've seen it a couple different ways with different software. But
yep.
There's a heating element in there. So if it's a really dewy morning or you're running a really high moisture crop, there's a heating element to actually warm that lens up, so it gets any fog off of that camera lens for you, because it can't see through fog any better than we can. So it warms that up to clear itself. Okay, so if you see that message, odds are that's what it's doing if you're in those conditions.
Yeah, sometimes a guy can run a whole season, never see that message, and sometimes it's every other day. So Just really depends on crop conditions, kind of what we're running through it. So definitely happens more in corn than beans.
The other thing, setting up here, like I said, we've got our modules. If everybody, I know some people have never seen the round bars, I've considered them, but you can see the difference on what you're gaining for capacity and how they work. The other thing, when we talk conditions, most of these machines, when we have them equipped coming in for corn and bean scenario, you're going to have straight bars over your separation grates in the back. Okay, so these work great in most conditions. They're just pushing crop around and through like normal. But we get into conditions, especially green stem beans, where we can't get separation. You get beans retained up in that nasty tight rope. Okay, so that's where we got a rasp bar that's a little different shape. It's got an extra lug or a spike on it. What we're going to do in those conditions, you take this one off and add 2 of these spikes. That way you keep your position, you know right where it is. But this spike, what it's going to do is it's going to vertically interrupt that crop rope to basically loosen that mat up and let that those last of those beans fall out of that crop mat, okay? And then when the only thing about this, I'll say, this is going to be too harsh on a cob. So you're going to get broken cob if you forget and leave these in there, okay? So hopefully once you get through your green stem beans, you don't need these anymore. You can run everything else with just your conventional straight bar, okay? And you can...
Does that affect your zero? You better check that.
No, because these are going to be over your grate in the back. These are not over your concave. You do not put these in your concave. It will not end well. So, and you can... These are both brand new. You can hopefully see the difference on that, how tall that spike is. It makes a pretty good difference in that, okay? So you can do, so there's conventional machine, there's 4 of these. So you can either add 4 spikes, just taking 2 of these out, or you can add 8 spikes and take all 4 of these out, just depending on how much disruption you need, how much you want to change back and forth. So what some guys will do is they'll run their round bars in this setup for corn. When they're running green stem beans, they'll have their skip wire, or their large wire, and their disruptor spike bars in there, and then that's your switch. You just move those in pairs when you're swapping between crops, depending on condition.
They used to run those flat bars with what they call the Rochelle rotor, Rochelle 01.
Okay.
Does anybody ever run the flat bars out over the concave anymore?
That I don't know.
I don't know that for a fact. I know there's a lot of aftermarket concaves out there that, I mean, you hear copperheads, you hear, I mean, there's a lot of different ones out there. My personal experience, I haven't seen anything we can't make work with what CNH offers. They're really, I mean, the combinations of what we have do a really good job. Like I said, round bars, I'm sold on them in corn. They make a huge difference. They are worth their money. There's always a debate of how many you need. And to me, that's going to be kind of depending on your conditions, your moistures. If you're fighting damp crop, that pitting is going to be a lot worse. So if you're fighting moisture, fighting still some green leaf in your corn, and you're getting a lot of trash running through the machine, these round bars will keep that trash moving through. They won't pin up as bad on you. You still get your separation on your crop, okay? So you see more guys today running 4 round bars in corn than what we used to. A lot of guys used to try to find 2 places to put them in. A lot of guys just do it all across the board now. So they're fairly easy. It's 2 bolts to change each one, so they're not that hard. Hopefully you haven't rocked the machine too hard and got your concave frame twisted. That's always the issue when you start getting stuff bent and twisted, and then they don't slide in and out fast and easy. But I guess the other thing right here where we're talking, that everybody understand our wear point. The bolt head is going to be your wear point indicator on these rasp bars. You know, it seems like there's a lot of life left when you put a brand new bolt in a brand new rasp bar. There's not a lot of wear point on this where you see the difference. But our recommendation is when there's a raised edge on the bolt and there's numbers on that bolt, you really need to consider replacing your rasp bars when you have neither of those left and that top of that bolt head is smooth, okay? Yeah, and I've been there before when you go out and you see and you find out they rotated the rasp bars or something like that, and it's like we have no idea where they really are wore or not. So that's our wear point indicator is that bolt head, okay? So Anything else you can think of here?
I can't think of anything else.